me 28 Emil, software developer. Work for a generic mid-sized tech company, the kind with beanbag chairs and a ping-pong table that no one ever uses. My job is to be a code wizard. I'm not a rock star dev or a ninja. I'm the guy who gets assigned the legacy system that hasn't been touched in a decade because its original creator quit to become a goat farmer in Vermont. I don't mind. I like solving puzzles. I put on my headphones, drink my black coffee, and I make things work. I'm quiet. I don't do office politics. I don't go to the after-work mandatory fun events. My performance reviews are always the same. Exceeds technical expectations, needs to be more of a team player, whatever that means. The code compiles, the servers are stable. What more do they want? My boss, Peter, is your typical middle manager. Decent guy, I guess, but his spine is made of jello. Hates conflict more than he hates system downtime. His solution to every problem is to schedule a meetings to circle back and touch base. The team is mostly guys like me, a few older cynical veterans, a few fresh-faced juniors who still think stock options will make them millionaires. We get along fine. We talk about video games, complain about project deadlines, and generally keep to ourselves. It's a stable, boring life. About a year and a half ago, I got tired of the clunky, inefficient way we had to run diagnostic reports and deploy test builds. It involved a dozen different scripts, 3 different platforms, and a lot of manual copy-pasting, wasted hours every week. So, in my spare time, at night, on weekends, I started building a tool to automate it all. A single clean web interface where you could just click a few buttons and have everything run in the background. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't a company project. It was for me. A personal challenge. I called it Janus. It was my baby. I built it from the ground up. Every line of code was mine. I kept it all on a private GitHub repository. Fast forward to about 6 months ago. The company hires a new project manager. Her name is Dora. The first sign of trouble was her email signature. It had her name, title, and about 15 different pronouns. She introduced herself on the company-wide Slack channel with a wall of text about her mission to champion diversity and smash the patriarchal paradigms in the tech industry. Oh boy, here we go. Her first team meeting was something else. She didn't ask about our current projects or the technical challenges we were facing. Instead, she gave a 30-minute lecture on unconscious bias and how the term master's a slave in database architecture is problematic. We all just stared at her. One of the old-timers actually fell asleep with his eyes open. Dora quickly established herself as the office ideologue. Everything was about gender politics. A project is behind schedule. It's because the male-dominated team culture fosters a non-collaborative environment. A server crashes. She'd make a joke about the fragile male ego of the machine. It wasn't even funny, just weird. She talked a lot, but didn't seem to understand what we actually did. She'd walk by my desk, see a screen full of code, and say something like, "Wow, so many cryptic symbols. We need to make technology more accessible to women who think more holistically." I'd just nod and put my headphones back on. One afternoon, a colleague, a junior dev, was at my desk asking for help with a tricky bug. We fixed it, and he was hanging around, just chatting. He asked what I did for fun, what side projects I had. Usually I don't share, but I was in a good mood. I showed him Janus. I gave him a quick demo. Showed him the one-click deployment, the automated report generation. His jaw literally dropped. He was like, "Dude, this is incredible. This would save the entire department, like 1,000 hours a year. You have to show this to Peter." I just shrugged. It's just a personal project. Still has some bugs. What I didn't realize was that Dora was walking back from the kitchen with a cup of herbal tea. She wasn't in the conversation, but she was close enough to overhear the key phrases. Incredible tool. Save 1,000 hours. Automated reports. She slowed down for a second, glanced over, but didn't say anything. Just continued on her way. I didn't think anything of it. About a week later, Peter calls a mandatory, high-priority meeting for the entire department. Big bosses from the C-suite are there too. We all file into the main conference room. Dora is at the front, standing next to a projector screen, smiling like she just won the lottery. She starts her presentation. The first slide says, Project Athena, a new vision for workflow synergy. She proceeds to describe, in excruciating corporate detail, a revolutionary new internal tool that will automate our entire testing and reporting pipeline. It was my project. It was Janus. She described its core functions perfectly: the one-click deployment, the automated diagnostics. Of course, she wrapped it all in her usual jargon. The tool would empower our team, break down hierarchical barriers, and create a more equitable development ecosystem. She hadn't written a single line of code, but she was selling my idea, my actual existing project, as her own brilliant abstract concept. The executives were eating it up. They love buzzwords more than they love profits. They were nodding along, looking impressed. A real game changer, Dora. This is the kind of forward thinking we need. I was just sitting there, frozen. I looked around at my teammates. A few of them shot me confused looks. The junior dev who saw my demo looked like he'd seen a ghost, but nobody said anything. Peter, my spineless boss, was beaming. "This is fantastic, Dora. A truly visionary proposal. We'll give you all the resources you need." The meeting ends. Dora is officially leading Project Athena. She's instantly the office hero. People are congratulating her in the hallways. I felt sick. I went back to my desk and just stared at my screen. The junior dev came over later, whispering, "Isn't that your thing, Janus?" I just told him to drop it. Don't get involved. It's not worth it. I didn't know what to do. Go to Peter? He'd just seen the executives praise her. He wouldn't listen to me. Go to HR? It would be my word against hers. A new star manager. It felt hopeless. Another example of the system rewarding the loudest, most shameless person in the room, not the person who actually does the work. So I did what I always do. I put my head down and kept coding. The next few months were a special kind of hell. Dora managed Project Athena by scheduling 3 meetings a week, where she would talk about vision and strategy. She created complex Gantt charts and assigned tasks to developers. The hilarious part was that the tasks were impossible. She was asking the team to build something that already existed, but she didn't know how it worked. She'd tell a dev, "Okay, by next week, I want a functional prototype of the report generation module." The dev would spend a week spinning his wheels because he had no idea of the underlying architecture. I just stayed out of it. I was assigned to other projects, thankfully. I continued to work on Janus in my own time, quietly improving it. It felt like the only sane thing to do. The team working on Athena was getting frustrated. They weren't making any progress, and Dora's only solution was to accuse them of lacking commitment or being resistant to innovative ideas. One afternoon, I was working on a critical bug fix and had to stay late. The office was mostly empty. I was running a few tests using Janus to speed things up. The interface was up on my main monitor. I was so focused I didn't hear her walk up behind me. "What is that?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Dora. She was pointing at my screen. Her eyes were narrowed. She was looking at the clean, fully functional UI of my project, a project that her team had failed to even start building after 3 months of meetings. "It's just a diagnostic tool I wrote," I mumbled. She didn't say anything else. She just stared at my screen for a solid 10 seconds, her face unreadable. Then she turned and walked away without another word. A cold feeling washed over me. This was not going to end well. The next day, it happened. I was at my desk, headphones on, trying to debug a nasty memory leak. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked up. It was Dora, and standing next to her was Peter. Dora's arms were crossed. She looked furious. Peter just looked uncomfortable, which was his default state. I took off my headphones. "What's up?" The entire office area went quiet. Everyone could feel the tension. They were all pretending to work, but they were listening. Dora's voice was loud, shaking with performative rage. "I can't believe you have the audacity, Nicholas. I simply can't." I had no idea what she was talking about. The audacity to do what? To steal my project, to take my idea, the one I presented to this entire company, and try to pass it off as your own. She pointed at my monitor, which was still showing some of Janus's code. "I saw you working on it last night. You have been actively undermining Project Athena from the beginning, building a knockoff version behind my back. This is the most blatant case of intellectual property theft I have ever seen." I was stunned. I couldn't even form a sentence. She wasn't done. She took a step closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound menacing. It's classic toxic masculinity. A woman comes up with a brilliant idea, and the men in the room immediately try to take credit for it. You are trying to silence me. The whole floor was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. I finally found my voice. Dora, that's my personal project. I've been working on it for over a year. She let out a sarcastic theatrical laugh. Oh, a likely story. You expect us to believe that you just happened to be building the exact same tool I proposed, and you never thought to mention it? Never? I looked at Peter for help, for any sign of support. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the floor, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Nicholas, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Let's go to the conference room. We need to talk to HR. He had already convicted me. There was no investigation, no asking for my side of the story, just immediate capitulation to the loudest, most aggressive person in the conflict. As I stood up to follow him, I could feel the eyes of all my coworkers on me. No one said a word, they just stared. The junior dev looked horrified, but he stayed silent. In that moment, I felt completely and utterly alone. I was being accused of theft, misogyny, and sabotage, all because I wrote some code in my spare time. And the system, in the form of my cowardly boss, was already lining up against me. We walked towards the HR office in silence. Dora strode ahead, a triumphant smirk on her face. I felt like a man walking to his own execution. The HR conference room was cold. White walls, a long faux wood table, uncomfortable chairs. The air conditioning was on too high. It was me, Dora, Peter, and a woman from HR. The HR rep was a neutral-looking woman in her 40s. Let's call her Ms. Protocol. She had a notepad and a pen, and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. She started the meeting with a bland corporate statement about fostering a safe and collaborative work environment, and taking all allegations seriously. Then she turned to Dora. Dora, please walk us through the situation from your perspective. Dora transformed. She was no longer the angry accuser from the office floor. She was now a calm, collected, professional victim. She laid out her case with practiced precision. She explained how she joined the company with a mandate to drive innovation. She talked about spending her first few weeks analyzing workflow inefficiencies and identifying pain points for the development team. She brought out a printed copy of her Project Athena PowerPoint presentation. This is the initial concept deck I created, outlining my vision. I presented this to leadership almost 3 months ago. She then described how she socialized the idea with various team members to get their buy-in. Her voice took on a somber tone. It was during this time that I noticed Nicholas was acting distant. He seemed resistant to the project's goals. I now believe he was already planning to co-opt my work. She mentioned seeing me working late the night before. I saw him working on what was clearly a functional version of my project, a project my team has been struggling to build. He never once mentioned he was working on a similar tool. He deliberately concealed it. She concluded her speech with a masterful stroke of corporate guilt tripping. As a woman in a male-dominated field, I am used to my voice being minimized, but this is different. This is a calculated theft of intellectual property and a clear act of professional sabotage. It has created a hostile and untrustworthy environment for me and for my team. She sat back, looking genuinely wronged. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. Ms. Protocol scribbled some notes. Thank you, Dora. She turned to Peter. Peter, can you add any context? And this is where my boss, Peter, folded like a cheap suit. He cleared his throat. Well, Dora has been a real go-getter since she started, very proactive. Her Athena proposal was very well received by management. He fidgeted with his pen. Nicholas is, well, he's a very talented programmer, very technical, but he's quiet, tends to work in a silo. Communication isn't his strong suit. He wouldn't look at me. I was very disappointed to learn about this. We expect our team members to be collaborative. Hiding a project like this, it's not how we do things here. He basically confirmed her entire narrative. The brilliant collaborative woman being undermined by the silent, uncooperative man. I felt a surge of hot anger, but I pushed it down. Getting emotional would only make me look guilty. Ms. Protocol finished her notes and finally turned to me. Her expression was unreadable. Nicholas, we've heard their side. What is your response to this allegation? The room was silent. 3 pairs of eyes were on me. Dora looked smug. Peter looked like he was about to throw up. I took a deep breath. My response is that this entire story is incorrect. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated it as a fact. I did not steal her idea. She stole my project. Dora scoffed. Oh, this is absurd. Can you prove that? Yes, I said. I can. I opened my laptop, which I had brought with me. This conference room has a monitor, correct? I'll need to plug in. Ms. Protocol nodded. Peter fumbled with the cables to connect my laptop. My desktop appeared on the big screen at the end of the table. I didn't open my code. I didn't open my project's UI. I opened a web browser. I navigated to github.com. For the non-technical people in the room, I began, looking directly at Ms. Protocol and Peter. GitHub is a service where developers store their code. It's an industry-standard tool. Every time a developer saves a change to their project, it creates a permanent time-stamped record called a commit. This record cannot be altered. It's a digital paper trail. I logged into my personal account. I went to my repositories. I clicked on a private repository named Janus. This is the project in question. I named it Janus over a year ago. Dora's smug expression was starting to falter. She looked confused. I clicked on the Commits tab. A long list of changes appeared, with the most recent at the top. This is the complete history of the project, from its creation to the last change I made last night. I scrolled all the way to the bottom of the page, to the very last entry. I pointed at the screen. This is the first comment, the moment the project was created. On the screen, in clear, undeniable text, it read, Initial Commit, and next to it was the date, a date from 14 months ago, more than a year before Dora was hired. A heavy silence fell over the room. I could see the gears turning in Ms. Protocol's head. Peter's eyes were wide. Dora just stared at the screen, her mouth slightly open. I wasn't finished. I slowly started scrolling up the list, narrating as I went. My voice was calm and even. Here, I said, pointing to a comment dated about a year ago, is where I implemented the core automation logic, the report generation module, as Dora calls it. I kept scrolling. Here, 9 months ago, is where I built the first version of the web interface. Here, 6 months ago, I refactored the database connection to make it more stable. I was unwinding the project's entire history, commit by commit. It was an irrefutable timeline of my work, my effort, my creation. Dora was pale. She started to stammer. But, he could have faked this. He's a programmer. He could have hacked it to show old dates. Ms. Protocol didn't even look at her. She was looking at me and then at the screen. She knew. That's not how Git works, I said calmly. The cryptographic hashes would be invalid. It's mathematically impossible to fake this history without it being obvious. Then I delivered the final blow. I scrolled to a commit from about 4 months ago, the week I showed the project to the junior dev. I highlighted the commit message I had written. It read, Minor UI tweaks. Colleague thinks this could save the company 1,000 hours a year. I turned to look at Dora. 1,000 hours a year. Does that phrase sound familiar, Dora? Perhaps you overheard it in a conversation you weren't a part of. Checkmate. The blood drained from her face. She knew she was caught. There was no way to explain how her vision so perfectly matched a project that had existed for over a year, right down to the specific phrases used to describe it. She sputtered. This is a conspiracy. You're all targeting me because I'm a woman trying to make a change. Ms. Protocol had seen enough. She held up a hand. Thank you, Nicholas. That has been very illuminating. Her voice was like ice. She turned to Dora. Her neutral expression was gone, replaced by one of cold, professional fury. Dora, your allegations are not only baseless, they appear to be a complete fabrication. What you have done is file a fraudulent HR complaint and, more seriously, attempted to take credit for a colleague's extensive work. The meeting was over. The truth was out. Ms. Protocol asked me to wait outside the conference room for a few minutes while they concluded the meeting. I stepped out and stood in the empty hallway, my heart still pounding. It was finally over. 5 minutes later, Peter came out. He still couldn't look me in the eye. Nicholas, I am so sorry, he mumbled. I should have listened to you. I mishandled this completely. The company apologizes. It was a weak apology, but it was something. I just nodded. A few minutes after that, the conference room door opened again. Dora walked out. She wasn't alone. One of the building's security guards was with her. She was carrying one of those standard cardboard boxes with her personal effects. On top of the pile, I could see a framed poster of Rosie the Riveter and a coffee mug. The mug said, "The future is female." She shot me a look of pure hatred as she walked past, escorted towards the exit. Her walk of shame through the middle of the office was dead silent. Everyone watched. Everyone knew. The next morning, the head of the entire tech department called an all-hands meeting. He stood in front of everyone and gave a short, direct speech. He announced that Dora was no longer with the company. Then he publicly apologized to me by name for a serious breakdown in our management process and for the false and damaging accusations made against me. He then announced that my personal project, Janus, was being acquired by the company for official use. Effective immediately, I was being promoted to lead developer, and I would be heading the team to integrate Janus into our company-wide systems. I also received a very, very significant bonus as compensation for my work and for the trouble I'd been put through. The rest of the day was surreal. People who had avoided my gaze a day earlier were now coming up to my desk to congratulate me. The junior dev who saw my demo gave me a high five and said, "I knew it all along, man." Peter came by later and apologized again, more sincerely this time. I think he was genuinely ashamed. We're not friends, but we have a functional working relationship now. In the end, nothing really changed about me. I'm still at my desk in the corner. I still wear my headphones and drink black coffee. I still solve puzzles and make things work. But when I walk through the office now, things are different. The work I did in silence for myself finally spoke for me, and this time, everyone heard it loud and clear.